To our, wow, it's March 2026 webinar. I'm Dwayne McNally, part of the Mortarstone team, and we're excited to meet with you guys today. Today, we've got a really fun conversation set up. Tim Dietrich, our Director of Professional Services, is going to be talking with David Griffin from Sea Life in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I'll let Tim set up the stage a little bit, but know that we've got opportunity for live Q&A. So if you have questions, either in the chat or in Q&A, please do that there. Also, just know that we're going to record this, as you probably already know. It's being recorded, and we'll send the recording back out. This is a conversation with the lead pastor. And if you're not a lead pastor, we'd really encourage you to send this conversation on to your lead pastor. And if you're a lead pastor, share it with somebody else. But the conversation today is one that we believe we in the church need to be having. And so with that, I'm going to, Tim, introduce David. You have a long relationship with David, which has been apparent as I've tried to control some of the conversation already today. So please, let's go.
Well, Dwayne, it's good to see you and everybody today on the call. As Dwayne said, my name is Tim Dietrich, and I'm here from San Antonio, Texas today. One of the things that brings us to this point is when we did our second annual report, Russell James, you'll recall, Dwayne, looked at us and said, so what are the predictable elements from the data that help us know what creates an outlier? And so we began to do some research. And what we found after the second report was there were 41 churches who had 4 or more years of consecutive growth of 5%. And one of the churches, David, was Community Life Church. And for 5 years at least, you guys have been year over year in excess of 10% growth in generosity. So it's an honor, David, to have you here with us today to kind of share from the pastor's perspective what you have done to be effective in generosity at Community Life Church. And for those of you who are watching, we're going to do the abbreviated Sea Life thing going forward. But this is Community Life Church in Forney, Texas. It's a multi-site church. They have 4 campuses. And
5.
5, I'm sorry. Well, see, you guys have been busier than I thought. David, you guys just celebrated your 20th anniversary as a church plant. Take a minute and just tell everyone briefly just the story of Sea Life, because it's really a phenomenal movement of God there in southeast Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Of course, I have 2 other co-pastors. That's a little bit strange in and of itself. 3 friends got together, had worked together in youth camps, things like that. I was executive pastor of a really large church, both in a pastoral role and an executive role. And basically, we ended up starting this church together, all 3 of us. And so we have a complete and total equality. The 3 of us make the same amount to the dollar, regardless of our educational or our education or our years in service that we had served up until that particular point. Made that decision, started the church. Every year we have a leader amongst equals, but we have equal votes on everything. But there's a person that sets the agenda for the 3 of us, as well as the additional overseers that we have as a church. Been doing it for 20 years, the same 3 guys. And ultimately, we've added a lot more staff members down through the years. I think we have 65 of them now, and not to mention another 40 or so interns. But we're grateful for all that God has done. It's been an amazing 20 years. Had an amazing celebration a couple of weeks ago. We had all 7,000 people. I guess some of them weren't there, obviously, but all 7,000 gathered together in one big arena, and it was great, fantastic.
That's great. So, David, tell us, as I mentioned, you guys have had over 10% growth year over year for at least the last 5 consecutive years. Talk about, from your perspective, your personal growth as a church leader in trying to help disciple the folks at Sea Life about generosity and stewardship.
Wow. No, that's a big story, and it's obviously been a journey over the course of 20.
Tim, even before there, let me just jump in here. David, would love to hear, what does Sea Life believe about generosity? What are the core principles there? And then answer Tim's question, if you don't mind. So just one step back and then step forward.
Can I combine the two? Would that be okay? Because I actually think I can do that.
That's perfect.
Sure. Okay. Yep. So what I would say here is this has certainly been evolving from the very beginning. Obviously, I was understood money. I was an executive pastor, so handled money before. In addition to, I did a downline. I had a business manager, and then I had more in the pastoral role, educational type role, staff leadership type role. So I did both of those things. But what I didn't do, which is what I think is the most important, is to kind of drive the ship as a senior pastor. So that was new to me. And so I basically began to understand the importance of generosity, and ultimately how generosity would be used for how generosity is used as a form of discipleship. And one of the things that I always found out is there would always be these people that would speak of outliers, right? And they would speak of somebody that gave a lot of money but didn't love Jesus, or they would speak of somebody that really loved Jesus but didn't give, any money. But for the most part, if you look at the list of what people give and whatever, and you look at this and you say, I want everybody that gives more than $5,000, and you go through that list, you're like, these are my disciples. These are the warriors for the faith right here. And so obviously there's a huge correlation here. And here's what's funny is I'm not sure I know which one causes which, the chicken and egg kind of thing. I don't know if giving creates discipleship or discipleship creates giving. Quite frankly, I don't know that I have to 100% figure that out. But if there is a correlation between the two, then I need to take that seriously. And so developed over years, lots of different seminars, development tricks. I've always felt a little insecure about it. 5 years ago, we started working with mortar stone, and then about 3 years ago or so, I was sitting down with Tim, and I told him, I said, I love every part of every part of my job except for funding it. I hate it because that feels really difficult, but I know it's important. And Tim looked at me, and I used this in a sermon one time. Tim looked at me and he said, do you believe in what you're doing? I said, yeah, man, we're charging the gates of hell. We are serious about our faith, and we're serious about gospel proclamation. Absolutely. And he's like, well, do you believe that it's good for people to be involved in this? And I'm like, man, yeah, absolutely. I looked at just what I just told you about the list. I mean, these are our disciple people. And he looked at me and he said, so are you gaining directly by any person's direct giving? And I said, no, not directly, certainly not. And he looked at me in the eyes, and Tim said, well, then stop being a wuss. And he says, stop being a wuss. And then just ask them then. Just be honest with people about what it is that you think God may be laying on their heart. Let God lay it on their heart, but just at least open the conversation that they should be listening to what God is calling them to do in regards to generosity and all those things.
David, that's great. So and Tim, I know you want to ask a question, but I'm going to ask another question. So, David, how do you share your own generosity journey?
Yeah.
What's that look like when you talk to some of the people in your church?
Yeah. So, it's slightly different depending on if I'm talking to an individual or I'm talking to the church, as gathered on a Sunday morning, because of course, on a Sunday morning, there's people that are there that don't even know Christ. And so this is certainly down the line, at least two or three places down the line, from what we're hoping, for them in a particular service. We don't want them to think that we want something primarily from them, but we want something for them. And so it's a little bit different in that scenario. But we try to be really candid with the people. We try to make sure that we're incredibly transparent. even when we're preaching on it, explaining, what we do with it, making sure they understand that, we're not equity owners. You're the owners. This is your church. I know it's a little bit different. I know based upon denominations, and I know you have all types of churches that are listening. But we are a congregational polity, but we are run by overseers, and so they elect the overseers every year, or approve at least, as the overseers kind of have a courtship method by which we bring people in that lasts over a year. And so I think I lost the question there. I went.
So telling, how do you tell your own personal generosity?
Oh, yeah. And so anyway, so we make sure that people know that, and I'm just very, very, clear. I don't mind, telling people what my wife and I have done. We've grown well beyond the tithe. That was a start from the moment we got married, and even before we got married, we were both tithers. And so we tithe, and we've grown beyond that. We say, I think, I'm not sure who we stole it from, but that the tithe is a wonderful place to start, but a horrible place to stay. And I do believe, and I say this to people all the time, look, I believe that in a culture that is as prosperous as the one that we live in, it is really, really hard for me to believe that 10% is where God wants us to stop. And that ultimately we should be growing in generosity and praying about what that would look like, to be not just a priority percentage giver, but to be an above and beyond giver in every way. And particularly as God has blessed us as a culture, and then on those individual conversations, I want to make sure they understand, in those individual conversations, I want to make sure that they understand that they have been blessed even kind of beyond these one-on-one, even beyond what I'm talking about generally to the church, but what I'm talking about to them. And so what has God specifically called you to, in obedience based upon what he's placed in your hands?
Right, David. So one of the things that you have shared with me, and you can discuss this to your level of comfort, is that you and Courtney have kind of moved past giving cash, and you've started giving from non-cash assets. Tell everybody a little bit about that, and kind of what your thinking is about that.
Yeah. So my wife and I, once again, I don't even mind, saying it in here. My wife and I, we give based upon our weekly tithes and things, we give approximately 15% of our income is what we give at this particular time. But at the end of the year, based upon any kind of speaking engagements, all these types of things, some family stuff that we've been involved in, we pray about what God would have us give as an end of year gift. And so those end of the year gifts now are always appreciated assets, particularly equity. Last year it was gold, not literal gold, but gold certificates, if you will, on paper. And so that's to avoid capital gains tax when it comes time to retire, because as you know, there's no pension for a pastor. I mean, I think most people in here would be fully aware of that. And so my wife and I give that way. So, and obviously we don't realize those capital gain savings now, because we weren't planning to take that money out. And then we immediately, Tim, just to let you know, we've been saving that money all year long, and we've been just putting it here. And so we backfill. I don't know if that language communicates to everyone, but we backfill. So this past year we gave gold and NVIDIA. And so the day we gave the NVIDIA to the church, we sent money to our financial planner from our bank, and he backfilled and bought the same NVIDIA stock that we gave.
Yeah, that's so great. And David, as we look at Mortarstone in the last 12 months, you've kind of seen the best of both worlds. You've had 655 first-time givers in the last 12 months. And in the last 12 months, you've had 45 gifts, individual gifts in excess of $10,000, 10 of which have been over $25,000. So tell us a little bit about how you have been able to leverage tax advantage strategies, giving from appreciated assets, to really help your givers not just make a significant gift, but find that blessing of tax smart giving?
Yeah, it's hard to get in those conversations to people that don't think this way in regards to their money, that have a really strong personal attachment to it. But when it comes to your high capacity individuals, that's when they hear that, their ears perk up. And so you have to, for me, it's a little easy to slip that into conversation. Sometimes when I'm meeting with someone, I'll say, yeah, I've just started giving, appreciated assets as my end of the year gift. And I always speak regularly. Even, I speak to our church about, hey, my wife and I are praying about our end of the year gift, those kinds of things. And I think that's, that's important to bring that up. Now, having said that, it's hard but when someone asks about an end of the year gift, I always try to mention appreciated assets.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, Dwayne.
So, David, one of the questions that someone just asked is, how are you talking about non-cash assets, DAFs, stocks, wills, trusts, et cetera, to your congregation from the stage and targeted audiences?
No, it's targeted audiences, and then we open it up whenever Tim comes in town. That's when we do that. I also have face-to-face interviews. Once someone has done this once, it's really easy to have more conversations. It's that first conversation that's going to be super difficult, and usually it's very difficult to get people to do that. I don't want to act like it's not. It's not like we bring Tim in and we have 300 people lined up to try to figure this out. Tim shows up and we've got 10 to 15 couples. But once again, once you get 4 of them, and the next time you get 4 more, those are easy conversations to have in the future.
Right.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that always strikes me, David, is I talk to people and they're like, well, aren't financial planners talking to their people about tax smart giving? And I've yet to find one that is. And so if we at the church aren't equipping people in that regard, there's a whole lot of us, and having worked in a large software company with a lot of equity-based income, the number of years I gave the IRS a whole lot of money that they didn't deserve because I didn't know how to do tax smart giving. I'm a huge proponent of doing exactly what you're doing, David.
Yeah, this is a side note. Just my son is a financial planner, but he works at a private bank, so it's for high net worth individuals. This is almost all he does. It's kind of crazy. Tim taught me about this before my son started doing it. This is almost all he does all day long, or RMDs and QCDs. That's what he does. That stands for required minimum distributions and qualified charitable distributions. That's what he does almost all day long.
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's awesome.
So David, Dwayne mentioned at the top that you've been a software user at Mortarstone for about 5 years. How important have you and Randy and Paul found data analytics to be in helping you structure your generosity and stewardship ministry? And how do you use that with kind of the broader team?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. We've been putting a lot of things in place from about 10 years ago. I mentioned to you guys when we were talking earlier, just that, I went to a conference in California. It was at Larry Osborne's church, and this guy from Generis was sharing there. And he basically made some statements, honestly, that were very stinging statements, because I realized we weren't taking this as seriously. And this is like generosity. We're not talking about the individuals face to face now. We're talking about the church at large, because you were asking about specifically, new givers and all those things with generosity. So we came up with a brand new plan, and kind of here were some of the things we were going to do, the way we were going to report things, the way we were going to send out our giving statements, a quarterly giving statement highlighting ministries. We went through all of those things. We also began sending letters from me. So this is before Mortarstone. From me, I sent a letter to every first-time giver that would just say, hey, this is, Pastor David, we recognize what appears to be a first-time gift. We want to make sure that we have the highest financial accountability. If you have any questions, on our website, we have our budget on the website, Tim. We haven't said that yet, but we have our budget publicly on our website. And so we put that in this little letter, short little letter, to the point. I sign it personally. We send it to them. Well, basically, when I got to talking to Tim and Mortarstone, I'm like, okay, that's just a start though. Because honestly, even though that's a great invitation, what happens when a person gives a second time? And so what Tim has helped us develop is so the first time comes from me, the second time comes from the campus pastor. If you include online in Espanol, we have 7 campus pastors. And so those 7 campus pastors, after their second gift, just reaches out and says, hey, they check the database and see if they've already gone through our starting point. If they haven't gone through our starting point, they invite them to that. Because here's the thing, if someone's just given their second gift, they've pretty much said, I'm in. Mm-hmm. And if you want to get someone to begin your kind of discipleship process, in ours it's called Starting Point, then that's the perfect time to do it. So they reach out, and every time they do it, they offer a meal. They offer the opportunity. We don't have offices at our church. Our offices are all the restaurants and coffee shops around the areas in which we're located. And so we make that offer. Church pays for those things, by the way. That's a big, important investment. We feel like it's a better investment in people than in brick and mortar. And so that's how we've been using Mortarstone. We've been using it. Also, they get notification of lapsed givers. If they know them, they immediately just reach out. And those lapsed givers, if you don't jump right on top of it, like the moment it's lapsed, like they missed 1 week or whatever, it doesn't feel conspicuous. We've never had a single person say, well, that feels conspicuous, I stopped giving. But tons of people have been, 100 people, hundreds of people have said, hey, thanks for reaching out. My wife and I are going through a tough time right now, or, we're separated. And it's opened a great deal of opportunities through the Lapse Giver program as well, through the Mortarstone app that we use.
Yeah,
they get notified of it.
Yeah. So David, that's great. That's the basic blocking and tackling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of stewardship, first time, second time, lapse givers. One of the big questions that Dwayne and I and the rest of the Mortarstone team have to deal with is the ability to see people's giving.
Okay.
And you and Paul and Randy obviously have, I shouldn't say obviously, but you do have access to individual giving records. Talk to me about that, not just from the practical purpose, but a little bit of the theological perspective, because that's probably one of the big dividing lines with some of our churches.
Yeah, that's good. We just made the decision as we went multi-site. We made the decision that our campus pastors wouldn't know those things, and that they would reach out to people, visit people in the hospital, all those kinds of things, not based upon what a person gives. Mm-hmm. And so they don't know that. They know the names. They don't know how much they've given. Randy, Paul, and I, we don't spend a whole lot of time on this. But we do recognize the importance of understanding, particularly like at the end of the year, people that are looking for, an end of the year gift. We reach out to those people that have given large gifts in the past with a personal note and say, hey, no, these are sometimes complex. They involve, appreciated assets, non-cash giving. So we want to be able to help you. So about 6 weeks before the end of the year, we do that. And it works. It works quite a bit. It works really well.
That's great. So David, you guys have really worked hard on your communication, whether it's sermons, your giving page, one-on-one conversations, just all of those different elements of communicating from what I like to say is from the stage to the page. How have you guys at Sea Life been able to really kind of saturate the church with just kind of that constant drip of generosity and have begun to normalize the conversation about that? What's that communication strategy look like and feel like for you?
Yeah, I think first of all, the strategy needs to include the senior pastor. Even if he's not strategic, he's the spiritual leader, and this takes a great deal of grace, a great deal of courage to have some of these conversations. So I think it needs to start there. And every time the pastor mentions anything, this is one of the things that we leave out. Anytime we mention any victory that the church has, we almost always make sure that we connect it to the giving that people are doing. That's maybe the most important thing. So if we're talking about youth camp, obviously this is a simple one. We say, hey, thank you so very much. We had 600 kids go to youth camp. We had 27 high school salvations, 38 junior high salvations. Praise the Lord for all that. And I want you to know that this is credited to your account, not ours. This is your church. You guys covered them in prayer. You gave sacrificially. It allowed us to send 142 kids to camp that did not have enough money to go. I'm not sure how many of those came to Jesus, but God knows. So thank you so much. You guys are the best. You're sitting around some of the most generous, and if you're here and you're not a part of that, just know you're sitting around some of the most generous people on the planet. So we speak into existence even if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's great. So David, your church doesn't pass the offering plate.
No.
Talk to us about your offering moments.
Yeah. So we do giving moments about once every 6 weeks. And those are moments, about half the time they're led by the senior pastor. Other times they're led by other individuals. Maybe a quarter of the time they're led by our campus pastors. And basically we just allow some time to talk about it, to lay the foundation of why it's important. I tend to point out that, when I almost always point out that when I was growing up, we always passed offering plates. And although that made some people feel uncomfortable, it was a great reminder for the rest of us that we had given or were going to give. And so, but then we give about a minute afterwards with the code up there and say, hey, this is a time to either thank God for what he has allowed you to give in the past, or focus on what he's calling you to give in the future. And so we're just going to take a time, and hopefully this is a time of celebration as well as a time of searching for what obedience would look like for you. So let's just take that now. And so we step away and we give everybody a minute or so, minute 90 seconds, really long enough for it just to feel uncomfortable with music playing. I think that's important. It has created such a crazy. So what we do is we chart this. Do you want me to share this? Is this worth sharing, Tim, about our charting of it that we talked about?
If you don't, I will, David, because I was impressed when I saw it yesterday.
Yeah, and I can even send. I don't even mind sending it because it doesn't have anybody's name or anything on it. But basically, we look at non-giving moment Sundays. The average non-giving moment Sunday in that 36 hours from 8:00 a.m. on Sunday until 8:00 on Monday. We include that all. And so our normal number of gifts, non-recurring gifts, we take those out of it, goes from 112. That's an average Sunday. And last week or 2 weeks ago, and it was actually during spring break for us, which was a problem, we went from 112 to 230 gifts. Our first time givers on an average Sunday is 5, about 5.3. The total, but on that Sunday, on 3/15, we had 41 first time givers. Our total average gifts goes from 112 to 213 if you take all of our giving moments over the last year. And then our new givers has gone up 37 first time givers every time we do a giving moment. That's the average.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
So you can see the jump. If nothing else, you can see the jump. And once again, everybody's is going to be different based upon where you start. But how crazy is it to basically double in number of gifts? And what's really interesting is 7 to 8 times greater in the number of new givers. Do not assume that people know anything. There's people that think that the government is paying for it. There's people that think that there's some rich benefactor paying for it. The idea that they are being called by God to be included in this spiritual endeavor is something that's new to people. And so we want to make sure they know it.
And
Yeah, that
David, I
was
know
one
that's
of
one
the,
of the things that we talked about even yesterday as we were prepping for this is the fact of you guys don't make assumptions about what people know about generosity and giving. And, I threw out the stat from our annual report that 50% of the people who gave in 2022 didn't give in 2025, which means 50% of your people turn over every 4 years, as far as your givers turn over about every 4 years. And if the average person shows up 1.6 times a month to church, the likelihood that they're going to hear in the past year or 2 years what you believe about generosity
Right.
is pretty small. And
Yeah.
so never making that assumption to me seems to be a pretty key point.
Yeah.
yeah, David, that is so good. Let's talk a little bit about vision, because I think in a lot of ways, vision is the tip of the spear of generosity. How do you talk about vision and connect that to generosity and stewardship? Because obviously, you guys started 20 years ago with a legal pad and a calculator, right? I mean, that's kind of
Mhm.
that was, it was a kitchen table church plant, and you guys have now gotten to, the 5 campuses, 7,000 people on your anniversary that came to hear Louis Giglio speak.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Some of those people showed up because they didn't have to listen to us. They got to hear Louis on that minute.
but talk to us a little bit about how you tie vision into generosity and stewardship at Sea Life.
Oh man, once again, I think painting the picture, and we do this once a year. We have one generosity series a year. We don't beat people over the head with giving, although we work it into, once again, our messages, our announcements, but we work it in where it feels natural in that scenario. But once a year, we do have a giving series that we do. We call it our Abundantly More season, and we just zoom in on that and work hard to make sure that people understand why we're doing this. And once again, that nobody's building their own kingdom here. Nobody knows this. The day I walk away is the day I stop getting paid as a pastor, and that's how this thing works. This is their church. And I know, and we'll say, I know in your heart, you want to make a difference. You want to leave a legacy. This is why we're doing these things. And I want you to be a part of it, to come on board and to join us in that conversation and in that opportunity. And so we make sure that, I guess, when you say vision, the main thing we do is try to make sure they understand that they're driving that vision. They're funding that vision, that God has sourced them, and now they are resources of the kingdom. And so we try to make sure they understand that, and then that they understand what we're trying to do. And so even in videos that we use, we make sure that we thank people for it.
Yeah. And so for those of you who are viewing, we've got some questions coming in the Q&A and in the chat. And if you have a question for David, this is a great time for you to do it. Dwayne, you want to take a minute and catch us up on any of the questions there that have been raised by our viewers today?
Well, we've got a lot, as you said, Tim, and so one of them is from the stage. Do you teach biblical scripture and theology behind giving generosity, or is it more topical, practical application of heart postures?
I think I would probably say we do both of those things. I would say that, once again, that in that Abundantly More series, and maybe that question may have come in before I mentioned a moment
Yeah.
ago, that we, like I said, have those 3 Sundays a year that we do that right before Thanksgiving, knowing that that's heading towards the end of the year, and those end of the year gifts. And so we do that, but generally speaking, we let if the text speaks to it, then we deal with it during the rest of the year.
Got it. Okay.
So there is
And
a
then,
topical series, but the rest of it is kind of as the exposition leads us.
okay, that's great. Question about back on asset-based giving.
Okay.
You mentioned a targeted campaign. Is that a calling, email? What are you doing for a targeted campaign?
Okay. So so once again, at the end of the year, which is when a lot of these gifts come in, first of all, it's real easy if people have already done before. If you just say, hey, just checking to make sure, do you need anything here? At the end of the year, it's so easy if somebody's done it before. And this happened this past year. Someone had given a large gift, and we reached out to them, and he said, well, you obviously have something in mind. What would you like? And he said, and he said, what do you need? And so we sent him a list. Boom. I sent it immediately. Even though I didn't have the list ready, honestly, I'm a little embarrassed to admit that. I didn't have the list ready, but I came up with 7 things because he was asking specifically, what can I fund? I wanted to give him some vision, as Tim said a moment ago. So I sent him 6 things. Within 15 minutes, he responds back with an email and says, I'll do number 1, number 3, and number 7. He said, you'll have a check for $135,000 because I put how much each of them were. And he said, you'll have a check for $135,000 from my donor advised fund within 7 days. And he CC'd his donor advised fund manager. So
David, did you learn from that to have your list at the ready for those future conversations?
Yeah, and we tried to. I just wasn't quite ready for that, for those end of the year gifts to be asking that question. But yeah, that's a big thing. I think that's really smart. We have a guy that goes to our church. He was president for years of Denver Theological Seminary, and he was also at Multnomah and Trinity. And anyway, he said that he kept both of his pockets. He always wore a jacket, and in both of his pockets, he kept. Based upon the capacity of the donor in front of him, he would just pull that thing out and hand it to them when someone would ask, well, what can I do? What can happen? And he always had it with him at all times. And he said, you'd be surprised at how much money I raised for the seminaries down through the years.
That's incredible.
And yeah, by the way, seminaries are doing it. You better believe colleges are doing it. So it certainly would be wise if we at least had a clue of what God was laying on our heart. We know. I mean, most of us know. What are we praying for? We're praying for. I'm praying for a crazy seminary campus we have a Bible college that's meeting in like a church in northern Ghana. Well, I mean, it's crazy to ask somebody for $250,000, but I got it. And if someone has a heart for missions, and I say, look, here's the deal. I got a $250,000 burning passion in my heart. They're like, okay.
Yeah, it's incredible. When I talk to church leaders who are a little reserved about talking to their people about mission and vision and opportunities like this, I always just kind of say, hey, your givers have got full mailboxes and inboxes from solicitations from colleges, seminaries, hospitals, puppies, whatever you name it, David. They're getting solicited, and you can't hardly watch anything on television without just seeing this recurring solicitation taking place. Yet the most important organization in the world, the Church of Jesus Christ, is a little bit wishful about doing that, and I find that to be quite ironic, for sure. Yeah. Dwayne, do we have any other questions, or we caught
up? We have a lot more, Tim. So
I'll hurry. I'll go quicker.
No, that's okay.
Let me do a couple of things before we kind of slide officially into the Q&A. David, if a young pastor out of seminary in his first church sat down with you over coffee and said, hey, Pastor David, I don't know anything about stewardship, generosity ministry. I don't know a thing. What would be the things that you would do to counsel that young pastor?
Man, so one of the things I would do is I would look and see what is the resource, who are the resources that God has sent your way. And ultimately I would say, okay, so if there's someone in your church that you recognize has spiritual fiber and is a giver, I would probably sit down with that person and ask for input. Basically, how did you get there? What would you encourage me to do as a young pastor? I would find out, because every environment's going to be a little bit different. I'm in Dallas. I mean, we're in the buckle of the Bible Belt. I mean, we got churches so big that I can see them from 30 miles away here. So I mean, it's pretty. I mean, there's a lot, going on here. So, but I live in a different context than someone that possibly is in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's probably a little bit of a different scenario. But I would ask those people that God is using, find out what's going on in their life. Well, how is God working? It's not, at the risk of sounding a little like Henry Blackaby there, but how is God working in the setting around you? And so I would probably sit down and talk to that person. Secondly, as a pastor, I would take it seriously that it's going to be your responsibility and you cannot abdicate it and hand it off to somebody else. And if you do that, you're going to be incredibly disappointed. That doesn't mean you have to understand money, but what you have to understand is the heart of generosity. Become it, then share it, and be brave about it.
Wow, that's a great word. David, you have obviously been up and to the right in your knowledge base about stewardship and generosity over the last several years. You and I went to the same seminary. We didn't get any of this.
None of it.
In seminary, did we? So we paid a lot of stupid tax to get to where we were. What would you say as you look at the next 10 to 15 years of your ministry career? What would be 2 or 3 things that you feel like you need to still learn or accomplish or understand in terms of just your stewardship toolbox as a leader?
Yeah. I'm still, first of all, getting rid of some of my fear. And the thing that has helped me get to that place is to recognize that I truly believe this is best for people in this Western materialistic society that we live in. I truly believe it's best. And so I'm still learning in this. And I would say that heart for people is really important. I would say, secondly, I think that those gifts that you're talking about, there's quite a bit of money that's going to be transferred in these next 20, 25 years. And what are the Gen Xers and millennials and even Gen Zers that we're going to receive some of that? What are they going to do? And so I mention this regularly to people that I'm talking about if we're talking about death or whatever, because, obviously I'm old enough now in my late 50s. I'm old enough to get to the place where I can talk about death or retirement or anything like that. And so I try to drop in there. It's real simply because I care about these people. I drop in there. Yeah, Courtney and I are still talking about what we're going to leave to the kingdom, and is it all going to be to the church or whatever? So I just mentioned that in passing, and I would love to help people develop further in that.
Yeah,
I kind of want your job, Tim. I kind of want your job, honestly.
Well, you know
no,
what?
Just kidding. I'm just teasing.
Well,
call me later, David. We can have a conversation.
Good.
David, you have become an incredible, great resource to the kingdom and to Mortarstone as a family, just simply because you guys, obviously, as an outlier church, you get it. Are you perfect? Probably not.
No.
Do you get it all right? Not always. But at the same time, the way that God has blessed you, Paul, Randy, the entire team, and the family at Sea Life has just been incredible. So we're just really glad to be a part of that. So Dwayne, we have a couple of minutes left, and
Yep.
I'm going to once again encourage people to put questions or comments into the chat or the Q&A. Dwayne, let's open it up for questions. And right before we do that, David, what is the one thing that I should have asked you that I didn't?
And I don't know that answer. I don't have that one.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that if you had a burning desire in your heart to say,
Yeah,
this is something that needs to be said, I want you to be able to share, because this is incredibly valuable conversation.
All I would say is this matters. It matters for the kingdom. It matters for your local church. And it matters for every single person that attends your congregation. Do not forget that. And I think if you can do that, and you can do all of this out of love and because you care about those people, I promise you the winning will take care of itself. Just recognize those things and move forward knowing that everything that every believer has belongs to God. You're just helping them recognize that.
That's great.
I was just going to say, David, I bet you believe that God owns it all, don't you?
I do.
That's great.
Yeah, I tell them all the time, we've got tons of money. God's just keeping it in your bank accounts.
That's right.
David, I don't know if I stole that from you or you stole it from me, but I say that a lot around
there you
our
go.
church as
Well,
well.
one of the things I like to say, David, is that there's nothing wrong with the harvest. Jesus never said pray for the harvest. He said pray for laborers to go into the harvest.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing
No, he
wrong
does.
with the harvest. And my conviction is there's nothing wrong with the giver. I think we just need laborers to go into the field and really help develop those givers and disciple them. So, the money is there for sure. Dwayne, what questions do we have?
So one of the questions, we talked a little bit about it before, but specifically, what are the core principles of generosity that you guys at Sea Life have?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, we believe generosity is a privilege. We believe generosity is a call. We believe generosity is not only something we do, it's who we are. We do believe in a priority percentage gift as 10% is the place to start. Once again, if someone starts somewhere else, we're not. We're a grace-based church, and so we're not really teaching legalism on that. We do have a leadership requirement of all of our staff, as well as our overseers, that they give 10% of at least their own salaries. You wouldn't be an overseer it would be even more specific than that for overseers, but for all of our staff. And so we believe that, my dad used to say this, I think he stole it from John Maxwell, but I'm not sure. He said, you teach what you know, but you reproduce what you are. And so you've got to be it. And so we tell our leadership, hey, you've got to be this. And if you don't want to, we're just going to invite you to not be a part of the team any longer. And it's kind of a deal breaker. And we're compassionate, to be clear. We it's not like, hey, we noticed you weren't tithing, you're out. That's not how that works. But
well, speaking of Don Griffin, you can give a quick shout out to Dad if you want, David. He's on the call today.
He might be. Oh, there you go.
I want to make sure that Don and perhaps Nancy is on the call.
Yeah.
That's great. So, what other questions do we have, Dwayne?
So one of the questions that's here is somebody just asked a follow-up question to what you just answered there, David. All levels of staff or just staff leadership as far as who's required?
For us, it would be all letters of staff other than administration. We have 5 different kind of categories according to our policies and procedures. That's a different conversation. But everybody but the administrative workers. But yeah, even people, if they have any type of ministry involvement, they would definitely fall into that category.
Because I'm assuming one of your philosophies there is you can't lead people where you're not yourself.
100%. 100%. You cannot give what you have not received.
Yep, that's good. What did your latest giving series look like? Number of weeks, the types of topics. What did that look like, David?
3 weeks. 3 weeks. Then we talked about a little bit of how that priority percentage gift is a divine principle. Then we talked about how God was. By the way, I'm trying to remember this. I don't have it right here in front of me. And then we talked about how God was working in the kingdom of God, how it was expanding, I believe is what we were saying. Boy, I wasn't ready for this question. And then the third one was kind of how in the church, how is the church using it? How is the church using this to win in the heavenlies? And so that was kind of it, kind of a spiritual emphasis. So I think those were the 3 general areas.
Okay, that's great. And someone asked a question whether there'll be a replay available. Yes, there will be a replay available, and watch for it in your inbox tonight or at the latest in the morning. But David, a couple more questions. And some of these get into, well, one of them is dealing with back in the asset faith-based giving conversation. And the question that was asked, let me make sure I get it right, is one of your first goals to educate pastors and leaders in this area of how to increase generosity through QCDs, RMDs, etc., or is it to educate the individual members in a specific setting?
Honestly, if I was answering this question, I would probably say contract. I mean, by the way, y'all, I might can talk Tim into buying my lunch someday, so that I'm not getting anything paid for this. But I would say in this scenario, this would be a super helpful thing to contact Mortarstone and Tim. He's certainly helped me in that. He has those conversations. And what's funny is that like we had one guy that 3 years ago, he called me and said, man, I don't want anything from my money. I don't want any giving from it. I don't want any credit for it and all this kind of stuff. And whatever. And I said, man, I almost said the guy's name. But I said to him, I said, listen, I said, let me let you talk to this guy. Cause he was talking about this thing he wanted to do. And so I said, why don't you talk to Tim's? Well, he did. He ended up talking to Tim. Well, he didn't do anything at that particular moment. But the last 2 Christmases, he has given $240,000 the last 2 years. Both years, by the way, not 240 between the 2 years, 240 each year. And what's funny is that, and he's given it intentionally because Tim talked to him about those gifts. He really honestly thought he kind of thought it was wrong to take, tax differences. But when you're talking about $240,000, you know what tax bracket that guy's in. Yep. I mean, it's like, I think Tim convinced him, you can give the $70,000 to Uncle Sam if you want to, or you can give it to your local church. And so I would suggest reaching out to Mortarstone or someone like them about it.
Yeah, David, we see great givers like the givers at Sea Life routinely making gifts from appreciated publicly traded stock, from their IRAs,
yes,
for real estate. We're now starting to see cryptocurrency become a bigger part of the giving menu. And then there's grants from donor advised funds. So those are the main kinds of gifts that we're seeing people make. And I'm so happy that you guys have really done everything you can to just say, hey, here's the menu. We're going to normalize giving. Yeah, give stock, give cash, give from your IRA. I mean, you have just totally put that on the bottom shelf for the members, attenders at Sea Life.
And what's funny is it's just, you can't talk about it all the time because it's just noise to most of your people. But there's a group of people that when you say, I'm really trying to make sure I identify the toxic assets in my portfolio, they go, what? And it's a small subset of people.
Yep.
It's a small subset of people. But let me tell you, the ones that know, they know.
That's
and they're going like, what? And I said, like an IRA. If you give your kids an IRA, they're going to pay crazy taxes, 40-something% on that thing. So why don't you just give that away to the church? Oh, that's a good idea. Well, they, by the way, may not even thinking about giving something back to the church, Tim.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But I've just killed 2 birds with 1 stone. So anyway, just a thought.
And I think in addition to those gifts we've talked about is, just talking about, estate gifts, end of life gifts. There's a rabbinical saying that says that your last will and testament is the final teaching of your life. And, that's where we have an opportunity to do that.
Yep. And, it's interesting, Tim, you talked about some of the types of gifts that David and the team there have seen. And we talk to churches that are in agricultural communities, and people are giving grain and other commodities that are, same kind of situation as,
it depends. Like I'm working with a donor in West Texas right now, David, about oil and mineral rights. It just depends on your geography and where you're at and just what your culture and community is.
Yep. And so a couple more questions that I think we've got a couple of minutes here, but and since we're starting to wrap up, let me just say I did put into the chat a couple resources for everybody. We referenced the annual report that we did this past year. This is our third annual report. And so I put a link to that in the chat, as well as a link to the Outliers blog, which Tim referenced at the beginning, which Community Life was a part of that study and that research piece. And so take a look at those. That'll give you a little bit of chance to dig a little bit deeper in. So David, someone was asking a question back when you were talking about lapse givers. What does the outreach to a lapse giver look like? Does it bring up giving? They're giving that they lapsed?
No, 100% not. Absolutely not in that scenario. They've already sent the message that message is done. I would definitely not mention that. 100%. And here's what's funny is, be honest. Pray for them and say, just through a weird series, God laid you on my heart today. The weird set of circumstances, God laid you on my heart today. And I just want you to know I'm praying for you guys. And if there's anything I can do, it's that kind of thing. And it has to be customized based upon how well you know that person, right? I mean, if you know the person really well, you're putting their name and their spouse's name and their kid's name. And if you know their pet's name, throw that in there. It'll be well received. If you love people and care about them, and that's what our campus pastors have to do. If you love people and care about them, then they'll pick up on that. And once again, just because you use money as the trigger, that's not non-spiritual.
So David, probably enough time for you to say, as church leaders, here's what I would want for you out of this conversation. Would love for you to just spend a minute, just talking directly to the hearts of other church leaders like yourself.
Yeah. Make sure you love people and not money. The institution is a wonderful tool, but the fellowship is the body of Christ. And make sure you steward that in a way that brings honor to God. We have a Savior that both is a giver and asks for a lot of his followers. So there's no need to fear when we're addressing either one of these things. Be a person of grace, be a person of love, and then a person of courage.
Dwayne, I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up if I say anything else. So
I have to say, Tim, I was just thinking the same thing. And I just got to say, for all of you guys who sat here, and David, especially you, I just want to say thank you for being with us, for sharing your heart. For the people who are here, I know there's 50 million things that you're looking at towards Easter, because Easter is just barely a week away. And we just want to say thank you for taking the time. And David, thank you for sharing your heart and everything else. This has been an incredible conversation for me. As a former XP, as an elder in my church currently, there is just constant things for me to learn in this space. And I love learning from people like you. So thank you for that.
Yeah. David, again, thank you so much for your time and for your partnership with Mortarstone. Not just as a software customer, but as one of our coaching clients. And most of all, David, just thank you for your friendship. When you find friends in ministry, those are rare commodities. We get a lot of acquaintances, but to find a real friend in ministry is a great thing. And David, I want to thank you and Randy and Paul.
Yeah,
I would be remiss if I didn't mention Randy and Paul.
They're awesome. Randy does all the hard work. I just get up here and get to say this stuff.
Well, one of the things that I want to just mention quick before we hang up, Dwayne, is every month when we meet, the three co-pastors all participate in the call. And I don't know of any greater testimony to the prioritization that you guys have made in stewardship and generosity than every month you, Randy, and Paul are there.
Yeah, and our business manager, the person that handles all the monies and things for the church and runs the entire financial office, which is 4 people in the financial office. His name's Bob Avery. Great guy's got a great deal of wisdom. If you saw him, you'd recognize how much wisdom he has. Lots of experience. You take from that what you want. I hope he's listening.
Yeah, Bob's a great guy, and every now and then I just get this random call or email from Bob saying, "Hey, I got a question," and so. it's great to know that he's doing that work. So, well, everyone, again, thank you for being a part of this. We're going to be looking for the email with the recording. Also, with that, we hope to give you information about next month's webinar. And if you want to know the latest and greatest that's going on at Mortarstone, follow Mortarstone on LinkedIn. It's going to hit LinkedIn first. We would love to have you there. David, thank you. May God bless you. Congratulations on 20 years.
Yeah,
Man, that's tough. Calvin Miller, who I know you know who that is, once said in a conference, "Every day I thank God that he didn't call me to plant another church." So, so that is
please.
that is you guys have done a lot of work, and it's just really been great to be a part of this with you today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Happy Easter.